First off, let me say a warm welcome to you all, and so glad to have you here at our event. And we'll be looking, of course, today at the whole issue of scaling innovation in food and agriculture. Is an extremely important topic, as you could appreciate, and we'll be kind of taking the case study approach to look at this topic and to kind of guide us through this issue. I want to, of course, introduce our speaker for this afternoon, Lennart with a T and not with a D, Woltering, and pretty much he assists, development practitioners and scientists really expand their work and take it to a new level of, reaching many and bringing the issues of sustainability, responsibility, and of course, most importantly, systems change. He's an advisor, to governments and alliances and organizations, and I probably can go on for the whole hour kind of giving the accolades to this guy, but I won't do that. Allow you to enjoy the benefit of hearing his wisdom as he shares with you from his deep experience and knowledge as a practitioner in this space. And this event, of course, is being brought to you by the SI Hub, and we are really a space, a new thematic hub of the SI network. And our aim is really to create a space to bring both people and NGOs and orgs together to have a shared learning and collaboration space where we can think about system thinking in the context of food, agriculture, and innovation, with the whole aim of tackling complex and wicked problems in our world today. And of course, so with no further ado, I want to invite Lennart to take us on a journey of exploring scaling innovation in our food systems. So floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adrian. Let me try to share my screen.
No problem.
You see the screen?
I see Bill.
You see Bill? Oh, yeah, this was the first one. Sorry, you already went to my surprise slide. But thanks so much, Adrian, and thank you all for joining today. Yeah, as Adrian was saying, I work for an international agricultural research institute, which is part of a larger consortium of agricultural research institutes that are called the, okay, now I need to click here, sorry, yeah. The CGIAR, which is a very difficult thing to pronounce. But as Bill says, and Bill is always right, you never heard of it probably, but they're very important. And I'll say one word about what we're doing. So basically our mission is to improve the food system for the world's most vulnerable people. So we're working on agricultural research, not for the rich people, but for, let's say, for the poor people. And as Adrian was saying already, reaching the Sustainable Development Goals, depends really on our ability to change our food systems, because they are so they're so important for each one of these Sustainable Development Goals. So on the left side, you see a little bit who we work for. Let's say smallholder farmers, we call them, people with small pieces of land, generally relatively poor. And the kind of stuff, what we do on the right, like innovations like storage facilities or kind of experimental farms. We have a whole gene bank of all the varieties of the crops that are important to the poor, but also other kind of innovations, management systems of how to cultivate your land, etc. No? Just to give you an impression. And for 50 years of existence of this organization, one of the things that we said, okay, well, we come up with these fantastic innovations as a research institute, and what we need to do, we have to get them in the hands of the people and make them, being used, right? So one of the things is, okay, we pilot innovations and then we scale them, right? So this is an example from Honduras, where people actually kind of monitored the adoption of an innovation. And you see, this is all going great, right? Over the 10-year period of the project, it went all very nicely. And then we expect, of course, this to continue. Reality is that in 99% of the cases, this happens actually. The curve goes down, the adoption goes down drastically. And what we see is that this success at the small scale is no guarantee for success at a larger scale. That is the whole idea of scaling. And it comes a bit from this concept of, okay, well, you discover something fantastic, you then try it out, you pilot it somewhere, and then it goes to scale. but we realized that there's actually a big black box of what we don't know, how to move from piloting to scaling. The other steps were quite easy, right? But this step is much harder than we thought. And I think in the first 4 years of my career here, I focused a lot on that black box, but I realized that there's another box. And this has a lot to do with our community that we are in, this the system innovation community, is that the scaling, even if it succeeds, it doesn't always lead to the good change that we want. So it's not only the problem of how to get from piloting to scaling, but second problem is how to get from scaling to something useful, right? So that's what this presentation is about today. Now let's go to that first black box. How do you get from piloting to scaling? And the big issue there is, how do you go from something like a pilot context to the real world at scale? Because at scale, that's where the real world is, right? And I think in the last, especially 10 years, maybe 5 years especially, the international community, people working in development cooperation, agricultural research for development, we learned a lot, you know, and there are different organizations that have been contributing to that thinking. And I just want to highlight 3 major lessons there. The first one is context is king. The second one is that you require multiple innovations. And the third one is that you have to have evolving skills and capacities on your journey to scale.
No oigo, bro.
Okay. The first one, this is the context is king. So the pilot conditions are not the same as the reality at scale. And what you see is that how do we intervene, let's say in Honduras or in Kenya or in other places where we have an innovation? We do a project, right? And the projects are often set up in a way that there's very strong leadership. You get an expert from somewhere all over the world to come and work there. They set up their own project offices, etc. They say, okay, we want to work with partners, but basically you pay partners to do the work for you, right? So it's kind of like a transactional nature. You have a lot of focus on capacity development, etc., and you have, you know, money for maybe 3 years or 2 years nowadays, right? So to reach something. And of course, these projects are often very shielded from the realities, the politics, the markets, etc. So it's kind of like this fish in a fishbowl. This project that we're doing is kind of like a very nice environment. The water is refreshed every now and then. There's a small plant there. And then we say, wow, this worked very nicely. Now let's go and scale this to the real world. But then you realize, hey, there's actually a lot of different dynamics going on in the real world, which you don't have in your very nice, comfortable fishbowl, right? So the context is very important for your scaling, but the other way around as well. If you're very successful in scaling an innovation, you can also affect the context, right? I mean, and the idea there is that if you change something, if you scale something, something else kind of scales down, right? This is a nice example here, I think, from Kenya, where you say, okay, well, the government wants to scale up rubber monoculture cultivation area. Thereby also the labor migration goes up, use of biochemicals goes up, but biodiversity goes down or cultural identity goes down. So scaling is not just, okay, one thing scales, it has implications on the context in which you're in. So scaling per se is not always good. You know, we have also a responsibility because you're affecting local populations that are there, right? Or you're affecting, for example, the environment. I mean, agriculture is the biggest polluter around. It is the biggest reason for biodiversity loss, etc., right? So scaling for the sake of scaling is not what we want. We have an optimal level of scale and we have a responsibility that comes with that as well. So the context is important for scaling, but the scaling also affects the context. The second lesson is that there are core and supporting innovations. So now I'm taking an example of a fantastic application to see, for example, what kind of diseases that you have in your crops. So you can mobilize a drone. And then the idea is, okay, let's scale this. And then that is, let's say, the technological innovation that you want to scale. But we have to realize that there's a lot of different other innovations that have to happen around that for that to make it happen, right? I mean, first of all, people need to be able to have a phone. People have to be able to charge it. People have to be able to use it. There needs to be policies around it, data protection, etc. So if all these kind of things also have to kind of scale in parallel for this innovation to happen. And sometimes you see projects kind of pushing an innovation through kind of like in a vacuum, right? Okay, well, we just want to have this. But again, here you see how important the context is, but you also see how important some critical changes in that context are to make this innovation, say, stick, right? So a lot of innovations have to scale in parallel. The third one, and this is my favorite slide always, because it comes with the Dutch queen, Maxima, riding on her bike. You see she's riding on her bicycle, very happy, riding on the grass even. You know, in the Netherlands, everything is allowed. And she wants to scale, and she can carry more people on the bicycle. And in the Netherlands, that's no problem. You can carry 3 kids and still have your groceries in the front. So that's great. But if you want to say scale more, you have to change vehicles. You have to change from your bicycle, let's say, to a car, and from a car to a bus. And every time you kind of like you expand what is possible with the vehicle that you have. And every time you also have to change the rules and regulations. Now you can just go on your bike, you can go on the grass, but with a car, you cannot anymore, right? Or with a bus, you need a driver's license. Although this guy, I'm not sure if he has it, but you know, in theory, you need a driver's license here. You need a system for payment, etc., which you don't have on your bicycle. So one of the things that the learnings here is that you cannot just extrapolate what you did in your project to the real world at scale. Scaling is not a bigger bicycle, if you want to say, right? So it has different phases, and in those different phases, there are different roles and also different skills are required to do the scaling properly, right? And that also means that over the phasing of that scaling journey, you have different actors and different collaborators that you need to be with. Now, this is an example from my own life. 15 years ago, I worked a lot in Benin in West Africa on solar powered irrigation. And we did also this project, and it was very successful. And we said, okay, we want to scale this, right? We didn't really realize, of course, that we were actually only a very few experts that could link, let's say, solar power and like drip irrigation. These kind of things were extremely new in 2005 in the region. And there were only actually a few people that could kind of like make sense of that in that combination, right? Also, the project, of course, did a lot of investments for very few end users, right? So that's again, that reality that you have in the project versus the reality at scale. But then you also have an element of this responsible scaling I was talking about. So if you can pump up water just with the sun, it kind of is free water, right? But free water, of course, doesn't exist. And we may take out water for these women, but maybe the women that are want to drink water from maybe downstream, they have less water, right? So it also comes with these responsibilities. And in terms of changing, how do you get then to scale? We needed very different skills from technical people who knew how many panels we needed, how to get the pressure for the irrigation up, to people that knew about fundraising, right? To people that knew about, okay, how do you actually make that kind of evidence, and how do you play with that with other people so that people get convinced and they want to join you, right? So also over that kind of journey, what I just explained, we kind of felt that in that project as well, right? Just as a small example, let's move now to the second block. So we talked now about the piloting to the scaling. The second, basically, black box, if you want to call it, is that not all the scaling actually leads to sustainable change. And I really must say that I have really benefited a lot from the System Innovation Network. And you'll see some of the things that the System Innovation has been publishing. You'll see it back here as well, because I use it as inspiration for the work that we're doing. So a big thanks to the community there, and especially to Joss and the whole team there. So anyway, that's a side note. But one of the things I think is very, very important to understand, and kind of eye-opening in that sense, is that, you know, we're working on these problems like, okay, the women in Benin, they're hungry, or they're poor, or whatever. That is a problem to us, but it's actually a result of a system in which they work, which works perfectly well. No, the system keeps generating that poverty, it keeps generating that hunger, works like a machine, right? And some people are benefiting from that, and they want to keep it that way. We just see it as a problem. So we have to see it as a system that produces that problem. And we have to understand it also, the wickedness of these problems, how complex these issues are. You can put, give people food, but that doesn't solve the problem, right? Because it has not only agricultural issues, but there are social issues, the education issues, environmental issues. So it is a very, very wicked problem. So you cannot really simplify that by saying, okay, well, we just do a project, we deliver this, and that's it, right? So, and that example came very clear when I was working a lot on issues like land degradation. And it was always kind of approached as a scaling challenge. Okay, this is a degraded land. How can we scale the kind of solutions that we have here? Because this is a solution to land degradation, right? So yeah, okay, let's invest in this and do more of that, right? So invest a lot of money, teach people how to do it, and you kind of get this everywhere. But again, this followed that curve that I showed on the first slide. You go up and then, it goes down quickly again, right? So, well, okay, here's the slide. So we made it from a challenge of scaling to a challenge of transformation, where we used the systems thinking iceberg to say, okay, well, land degradation is there. It has been there for a long time, but what actually are the structural issues for that? Okay, well, maybe there's no land tenure there, so people actually don't even want to plant something that is surviving more than a year, right? Or there has been no investment in research and development and new innovations. And where does that come from? Well, that comes from a mindset of exploitation that, okay, agriculture is there just to get as much from your land as possible. Or, the areas, okay, this is happening in the poor areas, rural areas, people in the urban areas, they probably don't give much about that, right? So that those kind of mental models are holding that in place. And by understanding that kind of the depth of what's going on, you can also go the other way. You can go back over the iceberg, under the iceberg, and say, well, how can you change those mental models so that you can change the structure, so that you can change the patterns? And one of the things that we did with a group called Catholic Relief Services is looking at, well, can we work with youth groups, linking the idea of social degradation, which they're experiencing. And Honduras is a pretty nasty place for many things. That also has to do with the environmental degradation. And then people say, well, this is interesting. Let us govern the soils and the lands. And then you get new systems of governance, multi-stakeholder platforms, etc., where you then get, as a result, you get this nice kind of restored land, rather than saying, okay, let's just put in a lot of money and plant trees and get this out of there without really addressing the root causes of why actually this is happening, right? So this is a combination of the iceberg with, I think, the U theory, where you look at emerging systems as well. So there, another kind of systems thinking tool that we applied on kind of the old problems that we're dealing with, because these issues have been around for many, many years, is the X curve. And one of the major ideas is there's always a bias to novelty. If there's a problem, okay, let's try something new, right? Let's prototype something, let's innovate, let's do something new. But there's hardly any investment or idea about what do we need to do less, right? What are the things that are actually holding that problem in place? So we looked at the issue of tillage and no tillage. And tillage, you can see here, this is a 50 bir note from Ethiopia, where on the money you even have a tractor with a big plowing system that is kind of like, turning around the whole soil. And we learned over the years that is actually not so very good for the soil. You lose a lot of carbon, you lose a lot of soil biology, etc. So there have been new innovations in that area, which are called no tillage or zero tillage, which is kind of like this small figure here, where you just make a very small strip. You open just a strip of land, and you don't just turn over the whole soil. You just only where you want to plant, that's where you turn over the soil. No? So, and that has been going through kind of like a traditional scaling curve. Now you experiment something. This is very similar to that discovery piloting flow that I showed you. Some new solutions come up, right? People are funding projects to do this kind of conservation agriculture, as you call it. then there's a lot more attention for it. The SDGs are calling for this. We need to be much more aware of the environment and agriculture. And then there are some examples, for example, in Zambia and Southern Africa, where these kind of practices are then kind of institutionalized. They say, yes, we recognize this. This is the innovation or the kind of way that we want to farm our lands. And then, you know, the phase of stabilization. So this is one way of looking at how do we get this innovation out there. But now I think the interesting part here, and that's why it's called an X-curve, is that you say, okay, well, there's a parallel process going on of actually breaking down the traditional practice, which is normally at an optimal state, right? Everybody's using it, the whole world is using it. It's even on your money notes. That kind of gets destabilized. Because, you know, the idea that, okay, well, maybe it's actually not that good for the soil. And every year I do it, I have to put more fertilizer and I have less biology in my soil, etc. And then you get into a space of chaos where people are like, oh, wow, what do we do? Do we hold on to this system that we've done? Or do we go with the new stuff? And then there's a lot of, chaos and unrest of what do we do now, right? We're kind of cut in the middle. And then the next phase is kind of like the breakdown, where basically these practices are not used anymore. And this is what you see in countries like Brazil and Australia and other places where everything is kind of like the other way of tillage. You know? So together with this, you see kind of like, okay, the scaling up of practices also has to be accompanied by an intentional intentional way of also breaking down the current system and understanding that current system. So, as I said before, also scaling can change systems. But again, you need to have the local buy-in. And you see that this X-curve, everything is happening in that local context. These are beliefs, these are traditions, these are histories that are at play there. They need to be respected and they need to be understood also to change, right? To make changes there. So there in scaling, it is really important that it's not just our thing, right? The donors or the development workers or the organizations that are implementing that want to change things. Now, whatever we change, it has to be supported by the local public and the private sector, because they're the ones that are there. It's also their problem, of course, right? So they can grow and sustain the impact. So if you want the curve to continue to go up, when the project ends, you have to make sure that those people that are there are willing and able to support that, right? So that means engaging them from the beginning, strengthening existing movements, design for local stakeholders' needs, etc. And also understand these disincentives of stakeholders and resistance to change. People may also not want to change, right? There's a renegotiation of power because the system is working perfectly well and you want to change that. There will be resistance to that, right? That also means for the kind of projects and approaches we do, we have to really invest in capacities of individuals, but certainly also of the organizations that are there to innovate, to collaborate, and to scale. Right? One other realization is that we are part of the system as well. The way that we intervene, the way that, for example, the money goes to places like Africa, etc., has been kind of geared towards that old mindset of, okay, we just want to have more adoption during the project, and then we can celebrate, and everybody goes home and does the next project. Because of the mindset or the kind of like the practice of, okay, we want to attribute that to our organizations or to us ourselves, right? And if you have a more of a systems view on things, you're more like, okay, this problem is so complex, we can merely contribute to that, right? It's a move away from direct beneficiaries to indirect beneficiaries, etc. I think you kind of get the gist here, no? So it also comes with a whole different mindset of how we ourselves approach development work. Now, we try to operationalize some of these ideas in something accessible and relatively easy to understand, which can also be used by the huge amount of people that are actually working in this space, right? And we call that the scaling scan tool. And shortly, I will give you a demo together with Adrian. And it basically builds on those three lessons. The context is king. It is about core and supporting innovations. And it's about this idea of phasing and the change of your role and the change of the collaboration that you need to, that comes with that. And as I said, we want to be user-friendly, rapid, and accessible. And the idea behind is that anyone can basically make sense of scaling in their own context, no? And the idea here, again, is that it's important that those local actors that we're talking about all the time know that they can make sense of what scaling is and what good scaling is and what maybe not good scaling is. So it has to be kind of accessible for them, right? It has to be exclusive. It has to be kind of like low entry. And last year, especially, we worked a lot on different versions of the tool that, you know, kind of like cut down to the essence every time. So something that you can do in 30 minutes or 3 hours or 3 days, right? So again, to serve a bit the audience that you have. We'll go through it in a second, but just to show you the architecture of it. So it has 3 steps. First, you define a scaling ambition. What do you want to do? What do you want to scale? But especially, where do you want to scale it? In what context? For whom do you want to scale it? How much do you want to scale it? So not just focusing on, okay, I want to scale this application, but who do you really are targeting, right? And where? And then in that, you kind of say, okay, how ready is that context to absorb that kind of innovation? And there, the model we use is to say, okay, well, for anything to scale, you need to pay attention to 10 ingredients. The technology, of course, has to be kind of good, right? It has to be better than alternatives, but also people need to be aware and demanding it. There need to be business cases, there needs to be finance, there needs to be collaboration. The public sector also needs to be involved in that in a positive sense. So these kind of 10 factors we found came back basically every time in any scaling initiative. These kind of things were kind of holding back scaling. So we tried to put them together. And then we found a way to score that. How well is your environment doing? And I will show you how we did that. And then basically what you get is kind of like a figure like this, where you say, well, we've been tweaking a lot the technology and the practice and making it better and better, but we never thought about the finance around it. So the barrel is kind of leaking there, right? The fact that you're not really reaching your scale is because you're not paying attention to the weak links in your scaling strategy. So that's a very simple way of doing that. So we set up the Scaling Scan website, and we have different versions here, the QR code. I will share that also with you later. But before we do that demo, Adrian, I will just make my key points, the conclusions, and then maybe we move to that, right? Is that good for you?
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so the key points here of this presentation are that most scaling efforts fail because people extrapolate linearly what happened at small scale to the large scale. Context determines scalability, and scaling influences the context. No? So you have this, that's why you need this, you have this control environment, you need this core innovation, but you have supplementary innovations around that. And the idea of responsible scaling, because you're influencing your context, right? So scaling for the public good always involves trade-offs, right? Scaling is not always good or leads to sustainable change. And the important role of local actors. I think we touched upon that. Scaling happens in phases, and skills, capacities, and collaborations change, and that goes kind of like very gradual, right? And I like that quote from Danella Meadows. Of course, you have to dance with the system, you have to feel the rhythm and kind of adapt to that, right? The problem is a result of the system behavior, and we are part of the problem, no? And I think my major takeaway, and that's why I'm always following the system innovation network, because I think these system thinking tools provide very new entry points to very old problem, right? And we try to use some of those thinking into the Scaling Scan tool to deal with this complexity of scaling and change. Now, what are the implications for our work? No? So I think there's always a tendency to say, okay, I need to scale my innovation as soon as possible. But I think if you understand now the kind of like the systemic nature of these issues, you have to understand that you have to address multiple pain, but also leverage points, right? In the system. It's not only one solution that is going to fix the whole thing, right? It's not a project problem. It's not something that, very controlled environment, something that we do, but we're dealing with social problems, right? And there's social movements, change of power, relationships, and mindsets. And also the idea that a better system will produce better results, right? So we have to address this architectural level of the system. And in that sense, scaling maybe is less about more innovations, but it's actually more about scaling these good properties of the system, the resilience of the system, the capacities of the system, the relationships that are there between the different people, the adaptive capacity in the self-organization. So that's, I think, my last, yes, so thank you very much. I will go straight now into the demonstration, right? So let me see how that works. So you're ready, Adrian, right?
I am ready. Yes, sir.
Okay, I think I need to stop share and then go back to my, yeah, there I think I go. Let me see. No. All right. Do you see my screen again?
I do the scaling scan.
Okay, so this is our website. And then we say, okay, do your scaling scan. We do the rapid one. So Adrian is now, we thought we can do it with everyone, and it would have been possible, but this is a bit of a more safer option. So I asked Adrian if he thinks of a case where we can use this, and this is kind of like really a kind of give you a taste of what it is and how you can also use it, right? So let's start a new scaling scan, and we say, okay, let's go for the rapid scaling scan. Now we don't have time today. So Adrian, what do we want to call it? What is your case?
Yeah, so we call this Victory Gardens Caribbean.
Victory Gardens.
Yes.
All right, let's go. So first step, we go and make your scaling ambition, right? So it's a brief description of what you want to scale, where, why, etc. Now it puts that innovation in a context. So now we can make a shortcut here by just saying what we want to do and where we want to do it. So what is the innovation that you've been working on or work on?
Yeah, so we want to promote urban agriculture among low-income communities in the Caribbean.
So
as a
for
means
whom
of economic
low-income communities?
Yeah, as a means of economic development and health outcomes.
In Barbados, you said?
Yeah, well, we can use Barbados.
So we can fill in more, but just for the sake of the example,
Demonstration,
okay,
yeah, sure.
This is our scaling ambition. We support the scaling process of urban agriculture for low-income communities in Barbados, right?
Yes.
So now we move to step 2. So we're doing great, okay? So now we want to see, okay, how is that environment in Barbados for actually scaling this, right?
Sure.
So that innovation, that urban agriculture that you're promoting, is it easy to adopt by those low-income communities? And is it better than alternatives? Or how would you say that? How would you score that? I mean, this is a 1 and this would be a 5, right?
Okay. So is innovation easy to adopt? I would say 4.
4. All right, good. Do stakeholders recognize that a new innovation is necessary? And are they genuinely interested to reach that scaling ambition? Do everybody kind of like, okay, this is the way to go?
Since COVID, 5.
5, great. Are there business cases? Can other people, like other local service providers or other people, kind of make a business out of this? Or is it very project driven?
At this stage, I would say more 2. That's a 2.
Sure. All right. So is the value chain, is it organized? No, are there many other actors involved in this? And is it easy to kind of like promote this kind of innovation, the urban agriculture? And well, I don't know what kind of stuff you need, but can that also be delivered?
Yeah, and it should be in terms of both like services as well as products, all the pieces that need to come together to make it happen. Yeah. Yeah, I would say that would be a 4.
Great. Is there finance available for these, let's say, the low-income people to kind of do this on their own?
1.
The knowledge
Money
and
is always
skills to
one.
do this, is it there? Is it easy to just do urban agriculture?
In terms of what's already available, or in terms of us applying that information, how should I view that? So if
Well,
it's
I mean, is this something that people can do themselves, or they need a lot of training to do this or support?
oh no, they can do it themselves with a little help. So I would say a 5. It's pretty simple.
All right. So is there around the collaboration, all the relevant stakeholders, are they kind of together in communities? Are they together in kind of like groups? Are they linked
That'd be
maybe
2.
to
That'd be a
two?
2.
So it's a
Yeah.
bit of an individual affair.
Yes.
Do you have a lot of data to show that this is good, that this is working from the pilot, etc.? Kind of like good evidence?
4, yes.
Right. So now this is all right, 9. We go for 10 questions. Yeah. So do you have a good coordination and navigation of the scaling process now and in the future? I mean, now your project is probably doing it, but are there other people that can take over that coordination after you're gone?
I would say 2. That was a definitely area of weakness. I would say looking back.
Okay. So the policies in Barbados, are they supportive for urban agriculture, or are they all focused on, let's say, the other types of agriculture, or not at all?
Mainly large scale agriculture.
So would
So
you
I would
say,
say 1 or 2. I'm ambivalent because the government has made some changes, so I would say 2.
okay, so this is kind of like how your context, your system actually looks like, you know, for you to scale this. So you're doing quite good here, but you really are kind of like limitations on the finance and on the business side, also in collaboration and leadership. So this is kind of like a short summary of how your system looks like. And now what happens in step 3, you kind of look at those weak links and you can select, okay, I want to know more about, let's say, business cases or something, right? You can select all of them to dive a little bit deeper and then say, okay, what can you do to improve your business model? Okay, well, we can do whatever, right? Now you have completed it, and now you get your report. So this is again your report, and then you get to say, okay, well, these are your points of attention. This is what you plan to do. If you want to learn more, for example, on business cases, those weak link, you can go do a business model canvas or do some other kind of tools to improve these kind of ingredients that are low for you, right? So it kind of gives you a tip to do further stuff. Now,
brilliant.
This is your result, and we went through very quickly. We just had 1 question per ingredient. In the full version, you would have, let's say, 4 questions that are going into different aspects of that ingredient. And you can see that just by talking to you, if we've talked more, you know, I would learn a lot about your case, basically focusing on these kind of issues. Another thing is that you can do this together with a group. So you can do this with your whole team, and you can say, okay, well, let's do this for Barbados, and you can basically set it up and share a code to them, and then your whole team can do this and kind of assess the system for scaling, right? How good it is. Thanks, Adrian. Does it kind of reflect what you experienced?
Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of really good to see it in terms of different elements that may look like a homogeneous whole, but they're really made up of individual sections that you could then change, manage, and correct. So it's genius.
So yeah, what basically would be for your project, you would say, okay, well, maybe we need to focus more on the finance aspects or collaborate maybe with microfinance institutions in Barbados, rather than focusing on or investing a lot in kind of like, how do we make this, what are the kind of methodologies we use, but focus on these kind of other issues, the collaboration,
leadership.
The finance, for example, right? That is kind of like the recommendation that would come out of this, no?
Appreciate it.
All right, Adrian, thank you so much for this quick demo.
No problem.
Thank you for using and abusing you. Now I'll hand over to you.
So Azra, our other SI team member, is going to pretty much take your questions now or comments or queries. So it's open time up for any comments, questions, queries, or quips that you will have for Lennart. It's the best time to do that now, and I'll allow Azra to kind of lead that time.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Lennart. It was really amazing, and especially the last part, it really opened up a lot of things that we wouldn't have thought otherwise. So I hope you all guys really enjoyed. So if you guys have anything that you would like to discuss or talk about or add to what Lennart had discussed with us, it would be amazing to sort of unmute yourself and get ahead with the questions. Okay.
Hey, Daniel.
Daniel, you can. You're on mute.
Yes, I managed to unmute myself. Thank you very much. And thanks, Lennart. Very interesting presentation. So I'm Daniel Zimmer from Climate Kick, Knowledge and Innovation Community. We are working a lot on systems innovation. And I'm working personally also quite a lot on scaling. I appreciate very much your presentation and your tool. We are at the moment also working on a large project in Europe on scaling solutions to move 20 farming systems across Europe to net zero carbon. And so we are also interestingly developing a tool, a scaling sort of toolbox. So I was very interested to see the scaling scan, but I had another question, which is for instance, we put perhaps much more focus than you on creating sort of an actor ecosystem where the different parts of the value chains can interact. So it's very much an active approach also in mobilizing the actors. I would like to also understand your perspective on this, if this is also something that you have experienced as something important that needs also to be, and how to manage this, and whether the scaling scan also helps in developing such an ecosystem of actors. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Adrian, you want me to go?
Yeah, feel free. Yeah, feel free. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. No, Daniel, thanks, and I'm very excited to hear about that initiative. I'm a big fan of the climate of the kids work that you're doing. So nice that you're online. Yeah, well, that does kind of the realization as well with the scaling scan, is that a lot of the discussion on scaling has been very academic or done by project managers somewhere in Washington or wherever they want to sit, right? So, and deciding upon big things for those local populations in Kenya or wherever. So the scaling scan was developed as a kind of like a transdisciplinary tool as well, to get those local actors involved and discuss about scaling and give them the language kind of to discuss these kind of things, like what we did now with Adrian, to see, hey, it is about scaling that innovation. That is kind of like the thing that everybody sees, but there are other things that need to happen as well. And that is one way to bring kind of stakeholders together. So what we do is often in, let's say, in workshops, we say, okay, well, let's put all these people together and they all do the scaling scan together. And there's always people that are very good in the technology. Then there's people that are maybe know a bit more about the finance, and together they see, wow, actually, we really need each other to do this. So yeah, one of the purposes is to kind of strengthen those multi-stakeholder platforms that are necessary for scaling, to show that it is necessary, that it's not only those guys that know about the innovation that are the smart ones. No, it is really about that whole ecosystem of actors. So this kind of helps create that mindset of everybody has to be part of it, and there needs to be innovation in all these different areas of expertise to make this happen.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thanks.
Perfect, Lennart. Thank you. Bart, can you go next?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lennart, for the wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed learning about your field of work. And for me, it's kind of new, but I'm starting to get very interested. In general, I love systems change, and I see the food sector as a very important leverage point. Yeah, so what I wonder is when these kind of innovation projects happen and then they want to move towards scaling, where is actually the ownership of guiding this process, and also of bringing in this awareness that you have just been sharing, which I think is crucial. So like who holds ownership of that, and also how is that being transferred? Because I don't know, this is an assumption, but I think often it's like an external institution or entity that does a project, and then it needs to be transferred at some point. So, you know, like how does that work? Can you speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, no, Bart, I think that's a great question, and that has to do with exactly like you say. So often these innovations are coming from abroad, no? Or let's say I'm in Mexico and we say, oh, we want to do this fantastic stuff in Ghana. So we come in with that innovation, and then we need to pilot it, of course, there. And then I think what happens is that we feel ownership of that innovation. It's our baby, and we want to see it through. But we don't realize that we're not the best ones to do that, because we're good at innovation and testing, but we're not very good at that fundraising or all the other things that need to happen, the advocacy role, the local ownership of that. So one of the things that we're kind of calling for is for our innovation teams also to see that. And I think in the private sector, that's done very well. No, there's an innovation department, then there's a marketing department, and they take it out, right? They're two different teams. We don't have that so much in the international development sphere. It's kind of like those people continue to be involved throughout, right? So what it means is that we need to also to think about the handover, right? One day somebody else has to do that. And we cannot just assume that they want to, because most of the project partners that we think will do it, they did it because basically we pay them money to be part of the project. And they're like, well, actually, we like this other stuff better, but they pay us, so we do it, right? So that kind of, we have to be really realistic and honest about how motivated are those local actors actually to support it. And are they able to? Do they have the skills, capacities to keep on maybe tweaking the innovation to different contexts? Because in the north of Ghana, you have different situations than in the south of Ghana, right? Or so you need to tweak it maybe. So the capacity to innovate, to adapt, but also to scale, also needs to be there locally, right? So there needs to be a handover. That's not always done very well, I would say, and that's maybe one of the kind of like the kind of the points that we want to raise with that scaling. That we need to think of this from the beginning. Who wants to do this? And maybe if there's nobody who wants to do it, maybe we shouldn't even be doing it in the first place, right? Or go to another country or another context.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Lennart, I just want to kind of jump quick on to Bart's question, ask a question. So would it be a case where do we need to kind of open space for local actors to be part of the innovation further upstream, so that some ownership is taken early up as opposed to at the end and then handing over? Would that help? Has that worked in the past? Have you seen that work or not? We'd love to hear thoughts on that. Yeah. Then of course let Frederick get in his question.
Yeah, I think that also links very nicely to Daniel's point, is that, you know, you need kind of these multi-stakeholder platforms or local actors that can then be involved as soon as possible in that process, right? And they can say, well, maybe we need to tweak it in this context, or it needs to be like that. You see it a lot, for example, in mechanization issues. There, you know, you cannot just maybe import something from China. You need to make it with your own local material. So those kind of things are very important processes, also for people to feel proud about that. That's kind of like their stuff. No, they're not scaling something which is ours or something. No, that never really works well. People want to feel ownership for that. So kind of involving them as early on. And that's why I like this human-centered design stuff, is getting more and more attention also in our line of work to say, well, not only from the scaling they're involved, but really from even in the design, right? But yeah, great point, Adrian. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Frederick?
Yeah, this question that you are all touching is interesting to me, and I think it's embedded in my question. We saw a little example, a small example of scan, but what I wanted to know is the system telling you? There are two questions. One that appeared because of what you discussed, and the one I had. So, is it telling you? Is it pointing you to other examples of organizations or efforts that have had difficulties? Because you seem to inventory a lot of these things. Can you connect them so that actually we can learn from one another? Because we're doing something right now called Enablers Without Borders, where we're trying to get consultants who have free time to help communities and so on. But I've never done that before, so I would have no idea on how to scale something like this. And so to look at, after making my assessment, somebody else who was as bad as I am, and who is now better, who could help me get a lot of wisdom that may not be embedded in the tool. Open question on that one. And the second one, you showed a couple of graphs that were doing this. And at work, I usually do that because I scale transformation, or I'm trying. And the classic is this, yoo-hoo! And the sound is useful for people to get it. And
I'll do that next time.
So for organizations, the goal is to sort of, because it's hard to stop people to wander yoo-hoo, we need to catch them when they fall.
Mhm.
But what is the dynamics for international development? And are there things, the same way your scan is a great tool, is there something that could be an early sign that people are going to approach these? Same in your scan. So now that you scale, don't go down.
Yeah.
That's it. Two questions. Thanks.
No, maybe on the first one, yeah. So the first time we used the scaling scan was in 2018 in Mexico, in Guanajuato. And we were there with a group of agronomists. So the project was a group of agronomists. That's already a bit of a red flag, right? For scaling, because yeah, we want to scale because it worked. Okay. So one of the things that they kind of unanimously came up with, finance is a bottleneck. Okay, what do we do now? Nobody knows about finance. We didn't even understand the questions around finance. What do you mean with collateral and stuff like that, no? And yeah, we were all thinking, and we were doing this in kind of like a workshop location where there were like, every day there were like workshops, no? And the next day there was a workshop on agricultural finance, totally detached from us. And I said, well, maybe we should stay here another day and meet those people, right? So those kind of things are happening a lot. Also, even within organizations, there are projects, a lot of projects on business model development or startups, supporting startup, but they're often very detached from the agronomic part. So can you combine them? So within your organization, there are often a lot of opportunities are already, right? Now, on your second point, I think one of the big problems, again, is ourselves with that Yahoo, because the donor tells us, I want you to reach 100,000 farmers by the 31st of December. I don't give a shit what happens the next day, right? Give me the 100,000 farmers. And everybody works there, 100,000 farmers, 100,000 farmers, 100,000 farmers. It becomes like a logistical challenge. It doesn't become a systems change challenge or a change challenge or even sustainability challenge. It becomes a logistical challenge. And we're good at that. So we can calculate and monitor, and all the monitoring systems go that way. So we have a lot of perverse incentives to work like that, to reach that top. And then people say, I did my project, I'm going to move now to another country, do another project, etc. Right? I'm telling this a little bit, provocative, but you get the gist of it. No? So we have to overcome that. And we need also donors to see, okay, well, maybe don't put those kind of numbers in there, but put other indicators there. Do you see private sector also investing in these kind of, let's say, tillage practices? Do you see other organizations thinking about this or saying, hey, maybe we should try this as well? Do you see the government picking it up in their own policies, saying, okay, well, if we want to give subsidies, we're not going to give subsidies to plowing, but we're going to give it to this innovation. So we have to keep an eye out on those kind of things as success indicators, as kind of a way to transition that. And of course, knowing that beforehand, if you want to scale, it's not only about reaching those people. That's kind of like a game, but it's not very useful. No, it's not sustainable nor useful. Not reaching the sustainable development, not helping to reach the sustainable development goals.
Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, mine also just came in with a churro. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Actually, I had a small question. the scaling actually involves talking to a lot of people and different stakeholders coming from different backgrounds and experiences. Does any of that actually influence the way in which we try and scale, and does it really affect in a good way, or does it impact negatively? Has it ever happened before? Like, yeah, that's
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And one of the things that happens a lot is that you say, okay, well, we have this innovation, and okay, well, we do a scaling workshop, let's say in Ethiopia, but we are like, it's our innovation, so we decide, right? But then you see that those people actually are also have a very important role, because without the finance, it doesn't work, or without understanding the local dynamics there, it also doesn't work. No, so it kind of, I think it opens a kind of the eyes of the innovator or the project leader, that those kind of local processes are super critical. And you kind of see a bit of a shift in, okay, well, we need to maybe give more prominence to them and to whatever is going on there. So that's, you can see it sometimes, you don't see it always, but I think that's kind of like the idea behind it, that we want to, what we want to achieve. The other way around, sometimes you also see, woof, again, you have a team of agronomists that are trying to scale something because it worked, and then you say, well, you also need a finance person, you need maybe a business model person. They say, but we don't have that in the budget, so, and we want to keep it to ourselves. So they say, no, we actually don't want that. No. So we basically keep on going with what we're doing and calling it scaling, but it's not really scaling because you're not doing the multidisciplinary stuff. So I saw that happen as well. No. So the people guys shoot, it's kind of complex. Let's just keep it simple. And so far the donors are okay with it, because they still believe in that story, that as long as the innovation is good enough, you can get away with it. And it's fantastic. So I don't think it happens again, and I hope in maybe in 5 years it's not possible anymore. But nowadays you can get away with it very easily by having a very simple narrative on scaling, and everybody kind of falls for that one because it makes sense, but it doesn't.
We have time for one more question. So does anyone want to take the opportunity to comment or ask a question? I guess not. No worries. Well, that brings us to the end pretty much of our session. Again, I want to thank Lennart so much for, I want to quote, for taking us to an easy ride to a deep topic. I think that was genius in how we said, and I couldn't agree more. So as a community, I just want to ask you guys to, both in the chat and on the SI platform, please make notes of topics you would like us to investigate as relates to the intersection between food systems and system thinking. Any formats you think we can bring to the table to make that learning experience better for you. And of course, you can find us on the Hub, SI Network, or on LinkedIn. And 3 ways to get involved with us is, of course, to be a member, join us on the SI Network. You could partner with us in hosting events, similar to how we're doing now. And you can also be part of our, if you really have a passion for system thinking and food, you can even be a part of our SI Food Hub team, our extended team, to help us to create these events and bring people together to explore these topics together. So I just want to thank all of you for coming on, giving us your time, and have a great morning, afternoon, or night, depending on where you are coming from. Lennart, just before you go, you want to say any parting words just before we kind of close the room?
No, thanks. Really, thanks for the group. And again, I think linking that scaling to systems change has been, I think, very important. So I see you kind of like the system thinkers group, and we need to really connect that to that scaling, which is often a bit linear, a bit more hardcore focused. So yeah, I really enjoy this group, and thank you for all being here. And thanks, Adrian, for the opportunity. And Anya and Sayeda, thanks.
Our absolute pleasure. All right, guys, have a good one.